Hello everyone, this is Warhawk Beyond 2040 and welcome to another edition of the Superman and Lois Season 3 review series. And today I'm going to be talking about Episode 8, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, which I have just finished watching. And this episode, just like always, absolutely fantastic. But then again, I wouldn't expect anything but the absolute best from what I would consider to be currently the best DC show going right now. This is a show that not only continues to keep getting better, but for me, this show can do no wrong. I think the show is on a real roll at the moment, and they're just knocking it straight out of the park each and every time. And I'm absolutely loving every second of it. No bad episode in sight. This is a show that's at the top of its game right now, and for me, I don't see them slowing down anytime soon. So, this episode was very emotional, and we saw several things come to a massive explosion, which was inevitable, especially if you've been following season 3 for the last few episodes. A certain event took place. We all knew it was coming. It was just a matter of when, and the payoff for it was fantastic. And the best part about it is, I think it's far from over. And we also got a major tease at the end of a return of a classic Superman villain who appeared in season 2. And if you've seen season 2 already, you know exactly who I'm talking about. He needs no introduction whatsoever. I'll get to that in a moment. But overall, this was a great episode and a great continuation from episode 7. So, as always, I am going to give a quick recap of what's happened so far. And then after that, we're going to get straight into episode 8. So, as we saw previously in episode 7, we were treated to a number of different flashbacks about Pia and Bruno Mannheim's relationship, how they first met, and we also finally learned in this episode that Bruno Mannheim and Pia are actually Mateo's parents and that he is Bruno Mannheim's son. So that was the big revelation for episode 7. And we also saw in episode 7, Jonathan and Jordan were begging Lara L to help cure Lois from her cancer using Kryptonian technology, which Clark, of course, was strongly against and put his foot down. And we also saw Clark reverts back to reporter mode and interrogating Bruno Mannheim about his methods in terms of where his wife is concerned. And we also saw at the end of episode 7, Mateo told his mum and dad that he wants them to meet his new girlfriend, Natalie. But little do his parents know that Natalie is the daughter of John Henry Irons, whose doppelganger has a very long history with Bruno Mannheim. And that helped set the stage for an explosive episode 8. And it was a great way to close out that episode as well. So, with that all said, let's not waste any more time. Let's get straight into it. Let's talk about episode 8, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner? So, we start things off with Lois going through her cancer treatment as we see her struggling through pain, and we see Clark being gentle and kind as possible while trying to make Lois as comfortable as he can, while we see the rest of the boys are doing their bits to try and help their mother feel as comfortable as well. And we also see her struggling with reporting the news regarding Pia and Bruno's marriage, which makes sense because by this point we've seen Lois and Pia kind of develop a little bit of a friendship after going to several cancer treatments together. So we see Lois is against the idea of exposing the Mannheims for what they really are. So we see Clark takes matters into his own hands to try and continue the investigation. So once again, we get to see Clark in full reporter mode, which is good because it's something we haven't really seen in quite a while. We've always seen Clark as the father and the husband, so actually seeing him as a reporter again was quite refreshing. So we got to see Chrissy and Clark interacting together, which is something we haven't really seen that much in the show, to be honest. So it was a nice change of dynamic, and we see Chrissy and Clark asking several patients questions about Pia to try and build up a better picture of what she's really like. As the investigation is going on, we learn that Bruno Mannheim actually had Lex Luthor framed for the murders we saw Mannheim and Pia committed in the flashback back in episode 7. So it's quite interesting to see that Lex Luthor, quite possibly the greatest criminal mastermind of all time and perhaps Superman's biggest enemy of all time, actually gets wrongfully accused and locked away for something he didn't actually do this time. So that's going to be very interesting to see how that's going to play out. So we also saw in this episode, we see Natalie goes to visit Matteo and actually got to meet his parents for the first time without knowing the history between Bruno Mannheim and John Henry Irons. So this was actually kind of cool to see the Mannheims acting normal for once, just like the Kents. But of course, that doesn't last very long. While Natalie's on her date, we see John Henry sees his doppelganger sister again, where he learns that Matteo is the son of Pia and Bruno Mannheim. So he immediately goes to get Natalie, and this is where things really start to heat up. As soon as John Henry arrives, Bruno Mannheim immediately begins to have John Henry beaten up and almost shoots him. But luckily, his suit of armor arrives in time, and eventually we see Superman get involved, and he's blasted by Pia's powers for what seems like an eternity. And after Pia basically loses all of her powers after using them all, we see that she's in a lot of pain. And for that brief moment, all animosity between Mannheim and Superman just drops, and we see the more human side of Superman as he says to Mannheim, "If I don't get your wife to safety, she is going to die." So I thought that was quite interesting to see. So as we see Pia collapses, we see Clark take Pia to the DOD, where she is kept in a high maximum security room to keep her powers from spiraling out of control. And we see John Henry Irons orders Natalie not to see Matteo ever again and confiscates her phone. So I thought this was a great blow up because we all know it was coming. It was only a matter of time before, Natalie found out that, Bruno Mannheim isn't who he says he is. And we knew that John Henry was not going to approve of the idea of his daughter going out with a Mannheim son. So, everything came to a head. Great action. As I said, it was more John Henry's story than Superman's, but Superman is still very much involved, of course, but this was still really good. And we saw Jonathan join the Smallville Fire Brigade with Kyle Cushion, and on his first day on the job, he gets into trouble after covering for Jordan, who saves civilians from a burning building. And we see Kyle Cushion begins to get suspicious when he sees that there are ice inside the house. So he starts to put two and two together that someone with superpowers has been getting involved and making all of these saves. So that was kind of a nice little side story going on in this episode. And we saw at the end, now everybody remembers Bruno Mannheim took Bizarro's body a couple of episodes back, and we see Bizarro has now officially awakened. So what's going to happen there, we don't know, but if it's anything to go by what we saw in season 2 with Bizarro, we're in for one hell of a ride. And with Bruno Mannheim in the mix, with John Henry Irons and Lois and Clark, all hell's going to break loose, and it should be a hell of a ride. And that's how we end episode 8. Overall, like I said at the beginning, fantastic as always. And as I said at the very beginning, Superman and Lois is currently the best DC show going right now. And boy, oh boy, never get bored of watching this show. And it just continues to keep getting better and better. And it definitely has that movie quality to it, which makes it stand out from all of the other DC shows. It's just got that little something extra that just makes it feel like you're watching a mini movie. It's just fantastic. So that's going to be it from me. I am going to wrap this up now. What did you think of episode 8? Did you enjoy it? What did you think of the whole explosion with the Mannheims and the Irons? Where do you think that's going to lead to next? And also, what do you think is going to happen to Pia? Do you think she will survive, or do you think she might die? And also, what was your thoughts at the ending with Bizarro coming back? What kind of role will he play in this saga? And also, what kind of Bizarro do you think we'll see? Will it be the inverse version of Bizarro, or do you think it's a clone? You know what to do, guys. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave your thoughts and comments down below, and I will see all of you next time for another edition of the Superman and Lois Season 3 review series, where I am going to be talking about episode 9, which I am really looking forward to seeing and talking about, especially after the way this episode ended and the way the entire episode played out. It's going to be epic, and I can't wait. And I'm pumped to see Superman and Bizarro battle each other once more. So until next time, take care, everybody, and stay safe. And once again, as always, much appreciated. Thanks for listening.